Hello everyone, good morning from Europe. This is Ahura. We'll be with you to review the economic data we had so far today and overall market condition. We'll check the economic calendar of the day and our expectations. So far, we had very important data from China, especially, and Japan. In China, let's start with the China. In China, reserves FX reserves slightly increasing, I guess. On the other hand, Chinese data published so far shows that the export increased only by 4.4% in August, and import increased only 1.3%. Both of them, they are missing the expectations and so lower than previous months. That's why we can see that the trade balance is positive above 102.33 billion, but in US dollar. But the thing is that the main reason of this positive trade balance is the much lower imports. We shouldn't forget that several times I mentioned about two concerns that we have right now in China and global economy. In China, the main importance, the most important concerns, sorry, for the Chinese policymakers is not the trade tensions, it's not the tariffs. It's about the internal demand. It's about the Chinese people that they are not spending too much money. That's why we have a low demand. And this low demand ended with much lower imports, while international lower demand also. Actually, this lower demand in China is the continuing of the international lower demand. That's like international concerns, but is much more higher and much more deeper concern in China. That's why we can see the inflation in negative territory. Tomorrow we're going to have the Chinese inflation. Tomorrow, the day after, we're going to have the Chinese inflation data as well. Let's continue. So this data from the China, they are not such a positive and like hopeful data. We can say that second half of the year can continue with much more concerns. We have to be very, and we have to be so careful about our trades and investments. Don't forget to follow the trend. In Japan, data so far they showed that the second quarter's GDP improved much better than expected. But again, when you go to the trade balance and export and import, you don't see that such a big and huge data from the Japan. We had that last week. GDP price, while the GDP increased by 0.5% in the second quarter quarterly and 2.2% annually in the second quarter, both better than expected, both better than previous quarter. But we can see that the GDP price index also increased by 3% annually and 0.3% monthly in the second quarter, which means that the inflation is still much higher than the central bank target, much higher than BOJ expectations. That's why rate hike from the central bank in Japan is much more expected right now. In Australia, building approvals and private house approvals both like they missed it. Somehow we can say they missed the expectation because private approvals increased by 1.1% in line with expectations. Not surprised, but building approvals fell by 8.2%, much lower. I mean, after 12.2% increase in the previous months in June, in July, it fell by 8.2%. In Germany, we had export-import data. Again, same in Germany. Look at that. Imports improved, it fell by 0.1% after 4.1% improved in the previous month. And export fell by 0.2%, while the previous month it increased by 1.1%. Again, these numbers and these data confirms that the global economy is facing with much more and a bigger challenge. That's the demand. That's the consumer demand. Don't forget about that. Follow this trend, follow the number. Let's see what's going to happen. Let's see what's going to happen next month. Later today, we're going to have sentiment data from what is it, today's data calendar? Right, yeah. We're going to have the sentiment data from sentiment investor confidence and Spanish consumer confidence from the Eurozone. And then, I mean, the most important data today so far going to be the consumer credit and the 3 months and 6 months bill action in United States. However, the CB employment trade index also will be important. Yeah, that was the data that published so far and the data that we are expecting to see later today. According to this data and considering these numbers, we can see that market, let's make, we can see that the market, oops, here we go. Market, sorry, we can see that the market risk is falling lower at VIX by VIX at 16.64. So, but US dollar index moving again slightly long under 98 mark, but again, what we can see in it as a data that it's not such a positive and good condition here. We have gold is improving slightly above 3,600 in the second quarter with the slightly weaker dollar index and the profit taking in the stock markets. Gold is positive and continue again the way. Silver is still positive and improving. The gas price, as mentioned previous weeks, getting closer to the cold months, getting higher, $3.28. Oil again slightly increased above 62, almost $63 for the WTI price. Generally, the oil should be around these numbers, not higher, not lower. OPEC Plus decided to increase the export from October, but it doesn't mean that we're going to have the much more export because some countries, despite this overall announcement, they may cut their production. In the stock markets, S&P 500, Dow Jones, and Nasdaq, all of them after Friday's profit taking and concerns about the economic growth, which I mean the fall, at the last hours after that we had concerns, much more higher concerns about the economic growth after such a weak labor market data, and also the profit taking. Yeah, the stocks fell sharply and Friday closed lower. So at the beginning of the day, at the first hours, we can see that today, the beginning of hours, which we can see that the futures market slightly increasing. That's the same trend in Dow Jones, Nasdaq, and S&P 500. On the other hand, in the cryptocurrency market, Bitcoin is still trading sideways around 111,000, 111,500. Above 109,000, the trend generally is a positive, but to confirm that the price can go higher, we need to see the price and candles above 100 and 13,000 US dollar index. This is a market condition generally. If you had any question, don't forget to write in the comment section. I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Have a good time. Bye bye.